in trying to speak to ordinary South Africans, not the government or whoever else, we need to be very sensitive about their departure point, especially if you want them to buy into what you're saying. So when you almost antagonize them, where's your humanity when you won't let Zimbabwean women use the hospital? They get very defensive and very angry, and you become a problem. Versus trying the departure point of understanding where they come from and winning them over to explain. Yabo Mama, the same way you left rural KZN, rural Eastern Cape. They still won't like the narrative. But you're just trying to get them to understand that some of these people, where they come from, they're also struggling, like us. The difference is that we were separated by British borders. These are not even ours. So, into ngicelayo mama is while you're shouting at them, yes, akumele ngabala.
No, but you can't say I'm shouting. And,
no, I'm just making an example.
And maybe let me clarify something. You know, I led the ANC, and I have always been an activist. And throughout my life, I have fought for the poorest of the poor. So the engagement was at another level. Of course, you cannot blame poor people. Of course, you cannot blame people who are primarily dependent, or who have been made to be dependent on social ground. Yeah. Because that's what they know. Yes. But the angle that the angle of our discussion has been about Traore, this aspect of Pan-Africanism and so forth. So that's where I'm coming from. So if we have to deduce the discussion to a micro level, then one can speak to that, because the poor people, the working class, the middle class and so forth, they see things differently.
Because they stand in the queue there with foreigners that are not meant to be here. And when you say things like your humanity, it's like, but my aunt died in a queue where there were Zimbabweans that shouldn't have been here. So where's your humanity for my grandmother? And it sounds like we're antagonizing them. So I'm just saying, but to yourself and others, because these things become clips, sound bites, and then you get attacked. And we need to protect the people that are raising these issues, because they're not the ones that created these problems. We need to focus very much on the people that created the problems. And when we explain to the ordinary person why this is a problem, we mustn't disregard their cries of Abahambe. We don't want Nigerians here.
It's mainly politicians who use some of these issues to instigate,
of course,
communities.
Of course.
They do not come with answers, because we know the very politicians who say Mabahambe, they fraternize with Zimbabweans, they even give them tenders. But in broad daylight, they say Mabahambe.
Sure.
But also, one last thing. With Zimbabwe in particular, you know, Zimbabwe is no different to Burkina Faso. How Zimbabwe got to be where it is, it was people who were saying that Robert Mugabe must get rid of the British, because Robert Mugabe was also a strong man. He decided to get rid of the British, and Zimbabwe is where it is today because of the decisions that were taken by Robert Mugabe. Now, if we are we are proud of Traore, and we are saying that Traore must continue with what he has started, what happens when he fails? What happens if he's assassinated? What happens to the people of Burkina Faso? Yeah. Are we prepared to accommodate them here?
We won't.
Because a revolution is no child's play. You know, you can just go on your phone and, of course, become a revolutionary.
Of course, like Upenzo on social media, Babas. I'm an activist.
But the reality is that decisions that leaders take have consequences. As Zimbabwe today, 40 years ago was thriving. There was no need for Zimbabweans to come to South Africa. In fact, Zimbabwe at some point was called the basket, you know, the bread basket case of South Africa, of Africa.
You're right.
Yes, and the very decisions or the similar policies that Mugabe took, they led to Zimbabwe where Zimbabwe is today. And I'm not saying they were right or they were wrong, but I'm saying what we are praising today is exactly what Mugabe did. And where is Zimbabwe today? Should we, the people who are encouraging Traore, be the ones who are accepting of these Zimbabweans who are products of decisions by their leaders, revolutionary decisions, as some would say, of their leaders? Zimbabwe is not here, or Zimbabweans are not here because of choice. They are here because their leaders made certain decisions. That's why they're here. No Zimbabwean wants to be in South Africa. There is no person from Lesotho who wants to be in South Africa. Yeah. It's the decisions that leaders, the leadership takes. And it is this conversation that we are having, it's these people who are saying, stand up, fight. What then happens when you fight and you do not win? So I'm just saying that we need to also be cognizant as a people, because some of these decisions or some of these aspirations that we have, they do have consequences. And many of us as Africans are not prepared, to face these consequences head on, because we do not have this, this Pan-Africanist outlook. Of course, when OAU was formed, our founding fathers, they had this vision of a united Africa. But we somehow fraternize with Traore, but we are not Pan-Africanist in character. That's all that I'm trying to say.
We're not.